musical teachers, it's Rainy, it's the new year, 2023, and we have a bunch of awesome videos in store for you. I am actually currently in the process of trying to batch the entire year of YouTube videos and blog posts and things, because if you don't know, I'm actually having another baby girl in May 7th is my due date. And so I want to actually make sure that my business is profiting and making money to support my family while I'm not actually able to do stuff, because I do plan on taking a real maternity leave with this baby. Especially because we'll have two at this point. And so I am working on batching. So you might see me in the same spot in like 6 different shirts because I'm filming a bunch of videos today. But that means you're going to have all this awesome content to have for me year round, because I am going to be there every Monday. If you don't know who I am, my name's Rainy Barton. I teach elementary music in Central Florida, and I also teach middle school musical theater. This is my 2nd year teaching that. And I created this YouTube channel just basically to help instill a love and appreciation of music in the heart of all of your students, giving you music teacher tips and tricks and strategies and ideas and all sorts of stuff like that. So if you're interested, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow, and I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, which I'm so excited about, because even while I wasn't posting stuff, you all believed in me and came along on my journey. So for that, I am extremely grateful. But you're probably tired of me rambling by now. So let's talk about what we're actually going to chat about in today's video. So if you saw the title already, which you should have when you clicked on this, then you know that we are talking all about how to teach melody in your elementary music room, basically Solfege 101. And so I'm going to be breaking down why you should be teaching melody, how you can do it, and basically the way or the order that you should go about doing it. However, this is a very extensive process, and most of the stuff that we teach in elementary music falls under these 2 umbrellas, either rhythmic or melodic. It serves the bulk of what we teach our students, but I don't know about you, I never actually learned how to teach any of this in my elementary methods concept class. Like, we went to see a couple teachers teach, and I just kind of watched them, and I took stuff from them, but also they had been teaching for like 20, 30 years. Like, their methodology of teaching is not what I would take with me into my current methodology of teaching. And so I entered the classroom and went, well, how do I teach this concept? How do I teach this? How do I even prepare students to learn a concept? Because you can't just go teaching quarter and eighth note and expect your students to thrive, because I tried that my first year. And so I basically created this video series so that I could better also help myself teach melody, because I actually suck at teaching melody. I've gotten a lot better over the years. Rhythm is definitely more my jam, but melody is one that I've kind of felt like, I don't really know, because I didn't really learn solfege until I got to college. So that was like a whole experience for me. And so these videos are as much for me as they are for you, so that when I need reminders of how to do the dang thing, I can watch my own videos. And so there's going to be a video series. This is going to be the first one where I basically break down how to introduce melody, like how to do it from the very start. What if you have no clue what you are doing? And then over the next couple months, we'll have videos on like specifically how to introduce sol mi, how to do sol mi la, how to do mi re do, how to introduce like all of those different ones into your classroom and like the order that I sequence them with my students. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned. Ask all the questions down below so that I can answer them for you in future videos. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so there are basically there are 3 steps in how to teach melody. I mean, there's tons of steps. There's like many steps. But these are the 3 steps that I am going to be reviewing over in this video to help you solidify how to better teach melody in your music classroom. And so the very first thing that they're going to need to do is they're going to need to experience high and low and up and down. I put those together because I basically teach those at the same exact time. So the first thing we'll talk about is high and low and up and down. The second step would be introducing the music staff, and I introduce starting with 5-line staff right away. I know you can introduce it with like 2 lines, 3 lines. I don't do that. I just go straight to the good stuff, and I teach a 5-line staff because I'd rather not have to add on later. I'd rather just teach it from the get-go, and my students have actually done pretty well with just jumping into 5-line staff. And then the next step would be to actually introduce sol and mi, which is typically the first ones that you do. If you have older students, then you might want to start with mi, re, do, because sol and mi can get really boring for like 3rd through 5th grade students. And we're not going to talk so much about that in here, but just know that Eileen Miracle has on TPT a song or teaching solfege to beginners like packet you can get, and it introduces starting with mi, re, do, so I figured I'd mention that in here. But now let's actually go back to the first one and talk a little bit about teaching high and low and up and down. So while these are not blatantly different, I just categorize it all under one umbrella because music can be high, it can still move up and down, but you're still trying to get your students to recognize the difference between something that's up high or it's up in the stratosphere or something that is low and it's down, you know, down here where common people walk and live. There are many different ways that you can like introduce high and low. Like physically, you can be using a body staff. That is typically one of the first things that I do with songs when they are soul and mi songs, high and low songs, because that's all I introduce. I will use like soul is up here. Actually, no. Soul is on my shoulders and mi is in my lap because I normally do la on my head. And so I'll have soul and mi. And so let's say, for example, that we're doing bee, bee, bumblebee, and I'm teaching the song. I might sing it to them like this. Bee, bee, bumblebee, stung a man up on his knee, stung a pig up on his snout. I declare that you are out. And then the students are copying with that with me, and then they're able to actually physically experience it. So you could be using a body staff. You could also do the human piano game where you have like the students actually come and line up, and like if you tap their head, they have to sit down and they represent mi, our low, and then if the, or low, yeah, they represent low, and then the students that are standing are soul or high, and so then they're actually able to see it physically and visually, and so they could be going high, low, high, high, low, and so that's another example of ways that you could do physically. As far as visual goes for high and low, I'll normally like annotate icons or words on the board. So let's just run with this bee, bee, bumblebee example. Maybe since bee, the first note is high, and the second one is bee, you would write bee up here in one color and then bee here in another one. Bumble, bee, stung a man up on his knee. So you could do it either with pictures, you could do it with words, but they're on different levels of the whiteboard. And so the students are able to better see, oh, and wonder like, oh, why are they on different parts of the whiteboard? Because they're different notes, but they don't actually know that yet. You could also do, you know, games where you sing a pattern to them or you play a pattern to them on recorder and they have to sing it back to you with high and low. However, that's a little bit more advanced and I would probably wait to do that until they've really gotten a lot of experience with high and low and up and down. And those are all things that I would do in like the preparation category when they're not ready for soul and mi yet, because that hasn't come yet, and they're not ready to learn the staff. And I do teach the staff before I introduce soul and mi, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But those are different like preparatory activities. And now I'm actually going to give you a couple of high and low, like some of my favorite tried and true ones that I've done in my classroom with my students that have worked exceptionally well. So some of these, for example, is fairies and giants, and I am blanking right now on who composed that, but it's exactly what it sounds like. There are parts in the music where it sounds like a fairy is moving around, and there are parts in the music when it feels like a giant is moving around. And so I typically will divide the kids into half, and half of them will be fairies, half of them will be giants, and we typically do a listening map to this first. So like there's a listening map that I bought or purchased on TPT forever ago, and we will listen to it to see when the fairy parts come and when the giant parts come. And then we'll just go for it. And when it's the fairies' turn, the kids have to move all around the room, the ones that are fairies, but they have to move in a high manner, whether their arms are overhead, whether they're jumping, whatever they think represents high. And then when it's the giants' turn, they have to move low to the ground, big like giants, move all around. And so I do fairies and giants. However, I talked to them that just, we're going for giants more in the sense of like big and like low and loud. We're not going for like tall, because giants can technically be tall. So you could change that to adapt something else if your students are not going to be able to understand that. But of course, then you have to make sure that you actually switch and you allow them to do both. Otherwise, they're going to get really mad, because there are going to be kids that didn't want to be a fairy that really wanted to be a giant, and vice versa. So make sure you take the time to switch that up for them. Another one that I love to do with my students, I actually got from Eileen Miracle from like one of her first day of school games, and it's called Bunnies. And all you do is you sit at the piano and you tell a story about a bunch of bunnies. So it'll be like, once upon a time, a bunch of little bunnies were hopping around in the garden, and you play some little piano riff. I play the same one every single time, and they hop around during that. And then you say, and they wiggle their noses, and when they hear the high part of the piano, they wiggle their noses, and they wiggle their tails, and then when you hear the low part of the piano, they wiggle their tails. And then eventually, once you've gotten used to this game, you can do it to where you don't say they wiggle their nose or their tail, you just play high or low. And then they have to hear it and go, oh, that was high. We're wiggling our noses right now. Or, oh, that was low. We're shaking our tails right now. And then it has other things like, and then they were eating carrots, and then all this stuff. And then they were going to sleep, and you go down the piano all the way to the bottom. It's like basically a melodic exploration with the kids, but it has high and low moments. My kids ask for it all the time. It's a really great warm up for the kids. I will try and link to where I actually saw it, but you just basically tell a story about bunnies, and like the tail and the nose is basically the biggest part of it. Another great one that is typically good to use around winter time with your kids, but you could use this at any point in time, and this is really great for going like up the scale and down the scale and teaching them like the difference between going up, down, high, and low, is I Have a Little Snowman. And that one, basically, they start as like a piece of snow on the ground, and then each like note they get a little bit taller and taller and taller and taller until they are a giant snowman, and then at the very end they have to melt all the way back down to the ground, which they love. But the song goes like this. It goes, I have a little snowman, he is so fat and round. I made him from a snowball, I rolled up on the ground. I gave him eyes, a nose, a mouth, a nice warm scarf of red. I put some buttons on his coat, a hat up on his head. Watch him as he melts to the ground. And so it goes through whatever scale you want to use. I typically just use C. And so each one, like I said, on each note, they get a little bit taller and a little bit taller and a little bit taller, and then they turn into this massive snowman at the end, and they melt to the ground, and they think it is just the funnest thing ever. And we always have a blast with that one. That one is really great for showing the range of both up and down. I also like using Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, and I got this lesson from David Rao, and basically it is a mallet exploration and also barred instruments exploration. So if you have the Orff instruments, this would be perfect for that. But basically you do the poem like you hold an instrument up vertically, and you say Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, and they go up the hill. You teach them how to go up and how the notes, you talk about how the bars at the bottom, like the bigger they are, the lower, deeper of a sound they are, and the tinier they are, the higher the sound they are. So they go up. Jack fell down and broke his crown. They slide on down, and Jill came tumbling after, and they slide on down just as well. And so that one is good for teaching up and down. You can have that discussion about high and low. You can also have talks about like woods versus metals and how those sound different and how different mallets affect the sound of the instrument. It is a whole experience. I know he has a blog post or a YouTube video somewhere, and so I will do my very best to link it underneath here because I use that lesson every year without fail, and my students absolutely love it. And then, of course, there's from R.D. Almeida, her popular book, Mortimer, which is by Robert Munsch, which is all about this little kid that does not want to go to bed. And so he keeps, like, not going to bed, and his parents and his brothers and his sisters and even the cops have to go upstairs and bother him. And so when it says they go up the stairs, you basically play 5 notes going up, 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 up. And then when they're going back down the stairs, you play down, 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 down. And we do that on the barred instruments, once again, the mallets. And then when they're like, Mortimer, be quiet, I let them play really, really loud, Mortimer, be quiet. And then there's a song that goes with it. I think it's like, bang, bang, rattle, clang, clang, gonna make my noise all day. Bing, bang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. And like I said, this is in Mallet Madness by R.D. Almeida, so I will definitely link to that book underneath here if you want to purchase it because I use it all the time, but I cannot take credit for that at all. And there's tons of other ones that I use, but like those are like tried and true, like high and low activities, up and down activities that I do with my students. You want to give your students as much exposure to high and low and up and down as possible before you move on to anything else. Like I spend a whole year in kindergarten doing this. Like I don't even introduce Sol and Mi until the beginning of 1st grade. I do introduce quarter and 8th note in kindergarten, but I don't introduce Sol and Mi yet. I give them all the exposure possible in kindergarten because like they really need to have a solid foundation on this. And surprisingly, kids will not understand this as easily as you think, because then you can do like, activities where you play a note and they have to put whether it's high or low, and like the kids come up and they point, and some kids will get it and some kids won't get it. And so like there's all different sorts of assessments that you can do, but spend a lot of time on the high and low and up and down section. Is it as exciting? No, but you can teach a lot of Sol Mi songs saying high and low for them, and then you change it to Sol Mi later on when they're ready and they go, I can't believe that, I knew this song, and it like blows their mind. Seriously. It's not hard to blow their minds in kindergarten. Okay, so once we spent a good amount of time teaching high and low, then the up and down, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce the staffs to the students. I introduce this in 2 different ways. And so the first thing that I do is I just introduce the staff clear as day. And so I will have a 5-line staff on the board, and I will say, all right, boys and girls, we've been learning a lot about high and low and up and down, but the high and low actually exists somewhere in the music world, and it has to live somewhere, and it lives on this. And they go, what on earth is that? And I go, it's a staff. And we talk about it and we count how many lines there are, how there's 5, and how many spaces there are, how there's 4. And we only count the spaces that are in between the lines and how this is where high and low live. Before I teach step, skip, repeat, I read the book When Step Met Skip, which I cannot remember the name of this author right now, but she's given me her books before. She's sent them to me before for review, and I love her, and she is fabulous. And I will post a picture of the actual book right here, because it has changed the game for me. And it's this cute little book all about a character named Step and a character named Skip and how they move around the staff. And so once I've introduced the staff, I will then read this book to the students, and they really understand the difference between step and skip. And then there is a worksheet that I got from Music Plus Coffee forever ago that she made and designed specifically for this book. I cannot find it, so I cannot show it to you right now, but you could just make one yourself easily. It's just having a couple of different staffs with like 2 notes on it, and the kids have to circle all the ones that are stepping and then like triangle around the ones that are skipping. And so it teaches them the difference between step and skip really, really well. And we make sure you could do the same assessment where they come up to the board and they have to draw a step for you. They have to draw a skip or identify it, however you want to do that. Then once they are comfortable with that, then we will go to the game Step, Skip, Repeat, which you can easily buy off of TPT. But basically, it'll be a slide, it'll show a pair of notes, and they have to determine whether it is a step, and then it's just stepping up to the next note, whether it is skipping over a line or a space to get to the next note, or whether it is a repeat, because you could have 2 notes directly next to each other, and that is important to know as well. Do not teach leap at this moment because they have not learned about law, and I just feel why add unnecessary stuff when they're not going to need leap again for a while. So we just teach step, skip, and repeat. And once they are very comfortable with that, we've practiced a lot, they understand skip and skip, they understand that music lives on a staff, which like I mentioned, I go directly into a 5-line staff because I would rather the kids just see it all from the beginning. Kids are smart, they can take on a lot more than you give them credit for. I know you could break it down into a 2-line staff or a 3-line staff. I just don't care to do that, and my kids have been thriving really well with learning 5-line, and I tell them, like, this is for the big kids. Like, only big kids get to learn about the 5-line staff, and they get very excited over that. Once you've introduced the staff, and you've done your high and low and up and down due diligence, then you can introduce Sol and Mi. And basically, all you do is all the same physical and visual and oral activities that you did before, like with body staff and a human piano and icons on the board. You just change it all to Sol and Mi. That's literally all you do. It's like flipping a switch, and then your kids will magically just understand it because you already prepped them so well for that, right? Of course, there are many other activities that you can do with the students after the fact, but at this point you can add stuff like you can add stick notation flashcards or staff notation flashcards. You can actually write Sol Mi patterns on the board. You can do activities where they have their own whiteboard and they have their own 5-line staff on it, and you sing a pattern like Sol Mi, and they have to actually notate it on their boards because they should be able to do that now that they recognize the difference between Sol and Mi. And then you'll just have to actually take some time to talk with them about the fact that when Sol is on a line, Mi is on a line. And when Sol is in a space, Mi is in a space. And so I just teach that one day at a time. We'll basically do one day where I teach where if they're on a line, they're on a line. And we just spend that day. I don't like to introduce them both on the same day. It can confuse the students. And then on a separate day, I will do where if Sol's in a space, Mi is in a space. And so we always just talk about how they are a skip apart. They are not next door neighbors. You have to cut through the yard to get to the next person's house. And so we always talk about that, and we fill in all that sort of stuff. And then there's, of course, many other games that you can introduce to your students. This is when I do poison pattern. I love to do poison pattern even with high and low, but poison pattern is where you do a pattern and they are never allowed to repeat it again, but they have to repeat all the other patterns that you do, and if they repeat the poison pattern, they are out. You can either do this as individual students are out, but my favorite way to do it is classroom versus teacher, whereas if none of the class messes up, I lose a point and all of that sort of stuff. You could do King of the Mountain, which is a fun Sol Mi game that I have in my shop. I'll link that down below. You could add a specific book to it. I like to add the book The Doorbell Rang, which I think I got from Katie Grace Miller, basically because ding dong is Sol Mi. Every time it says the doorbell rang, they sing, or they could play this on barred instruments, ding dong, to reinforce Sol Mi. There are so many different things that you could do to introduce Sol Mi once you get there, and I'm going to have a separate video which is coming next week, which talks about all my favorite Sol Mi songs. We're only going to do songs for next week. We're going to do activities a different week because I want to make sure I have lots of content for the years to come. So we're just going to do my favorite songs to teach Soul Me, but I have like 6 or 7, so don't worry, that's coming next week. But once you've taught and introduced Soul Me, the world is your oyster. You can do so much more from that point. It's just so much more exciting than when you're stuck teaching high and low and like introducing the staff and all that. You just have to make sure that you are still reviewing the staff a lot with your students, and you don't just like teach it one time and then not show it to them again for months, because they're not going to remember, I promise you. And so really quickly, let's just go through the 3 steps one more time. So you want to start with high and low / up and down. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to reinforce the crap out of that. Then you want to introduce the staff, typically introduce using Step and Skip. I highly recommend that book, When Step Met Skip. I really do. It is fantastic, and my kids have loved it. And then you can finally introduce Soul and Me. And that is the first one that I would recommend, unless you are an older beginner and you want to skip right to Me, Ray, Do, skip Soul Me, and all of that good stuff. And so I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope that you got a lot of ideas. Anybody that I talked about that was in a specific activity of theirs, I will make sure to try to link underneath here. If I have any specific activities like my Soul Me bundle, I will link under here. Just look for all the links under this video is basically what I am saying. But with that, like I said, next week we are going to be talking all about my favorite songs for Soul Me, and I have some really fun stuff coming around the pike for you, so get excited. If you have any questions, drop them down below, and if you got to the end of this video, give me a thumbs up with your favorite thing that you got from here. And I will see you guys in next week's video.